Hey everyone, I'm James Lynch, and this is Early Look, the show where I take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, I'm going to be taking a look at the UFC 282 middleweight main card fight between Darren Till and Dricus Du Plessis. But before I give you my preview and pick, you know the drill. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Those things really do help out the channel a lot. And if you've never watched the show before, I basically go through a bunch of stats, a bunch of intangibles, and then I give you my preview and pick. Take it or leave it, doesn't matter. We just look at every angle of this upcoming matchup and discuss it there. So let's get into it. UFC 282 going to be taking place next Saturday, December 10th, T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas, Nevada. We got a new main event, but this fight, luckily, knock on wood, has stayed intact at the time of recording this. And let's do a quick tale of the tape between these two. Big fight in the division. Darren Till, Dricus Du Plessis. We can see there 29 years old for Till, 28 for Dricus. 6 feet tall to 6'1", 75-inch reach to 76. So Dricus going to be a little bit younger and just a tiny bit taller and a little bit more of a reach advantage. Okay, we're going to start with the gorilla, Darren Till. It's been a while since we've seen him in the cage. Darren Till, you can see, and other quick thing that got to mention, obviously, this is a 3-round fight. It's on the main card. So, yeah, got to point that out. I know Darren Till's been in a few 5-round fights. So, yeah, this will be interesting to see him just doing a 3-round fight. Darren Till, you can see there, 18-4-1 record. He's got 10 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 6 decisions. He's currently the number 9 ranked middleweight. He is 29 years old. He's actually going to be turning 30 on Christmas Eve. He is 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach, like I mentioned. Has no real physical advantages in this fight over his opponent. Till has the performance of the night bonus 1 time against Donald Cerrone. He's had fight of the night 2 times against Nicolas Dalby and Jorge Masvidal. You can see there, Till made his debut, his amateur debut, way back in November of 2010. Went 3-0 as an amateur. Didn't make his professional debut till February 2013, and didn't lose a fight until he fought Tyron Woodley for the title, which is pretty incredible if you think about the run that he went on. There's a controversial fight in between there. We'll mention that in a second. But yeah, you can see there, MMA debut, February 2013. UFC debut was in May of 2015 there. He has gone 6-3-1 in the UFC. Sorry, 6-4-1 in the UFC. I got to update that. 6-4-1, 2 stoppage wins. One key thing here, and we'll talk about the lack of activity here. If you think about it, he made his debut in May of 2015. He's only got, 11 UFC fights, which is, not a ton if you think about it. Like if you sort of go year by year, it's not a ton of fights for Till. There's been a lot of layoffs in between, especially over the last little bit here. You can see some of the notable wins that Till has had in his career, including Donald Cerrone, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and Calvin Gastelum. Some of his notable losses include Tyron Woodley, which is the title fight. He got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, which prompted the move to 185, and then Derek Brunson and Robert Whittaker as well. So he's had a couple key losses in his career, and that's why he's, has this really kind of dangerous fight here with Dricus coming up here. Now, as far as layoffs, I talked about it there. He's had a ton. Go all the way back to the Jesse Arini fight. Going from Nicolas Dalby. We'll start with Dalby, actually. Going from Nicolas Dalby to Arini, there was a 582-day layoff here. Look at this, 2015 and 2017. Then going from Robert Whittaker to Derek Brunson, there was a 406-day layoff in that fight as well. And then going from Derek Brunson to Dricus on December 10th, there's a 462-day layoff. So that's one thing that's really hurt Till over his career. As great as he's been, he has not been that active, and that has hurt his progression in the weight class for sure, just not competing that much. Now, I mentioned it there, Darren Till had spent some time at welterweight. He's actually fought 8 times at welterweight. He's fought 2 catchweight fights as well. That was where he missed weight. So he had a catchweight against Arini. That was Ariani. I hope I'm saying that right. 176, he came in for that fight. And then when he fought Thompson, Stephen Thompson, that was in Liverpool, he actually came in at 174.5. So he missed weight in both of those fights, ended up winning both of those. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then he's had, I believe, 5 middleweight fights here. If you look at here, Gastelum, Whittaker, Brunson. 4 middleweight fights. There you go. Got to get my math correct there. I mentioned the injuries and USADA and all that stuff. Well, he's never had a USADA issue, thankfully. But if you look at the injuries here, he's supposed to fight Jack Hermanson in December of 2020. Had an injury there. Was pulled out of that fight. Remember, he was supposed to fight Marvin Vettori in April. Had a collarbone injury that forced him out of that. And then he was supposed to fight Jack Hermanson, and he had a leg injury that was supposed to take place at UFC London. So, like I said, it's going to be a 462-day layoff going from the Derek Brunson fight to Dricus. So that's a really long layoff going into any fight. I mentioned some controversial fights there. We'll start first with the fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson there at UFC Fight Night 130. That was back in May of 2018. If you look at the media scorecards for that one, 3 media members scoring the fight for Darren Till, 22 media members scoring the fight for Stephen Thompson. So that's one that, again, people felt like that should have gone the other way, but that was the fight that ended up getting the title shot. And of course, when he fought for the title, it was a completely one-sided fight against Tyron Woodley. So maybe a little bit too soon for Till there. Now, the Robert Whittaker fight, I actually went back and looked at that. And interestingly enough, some people actually scored the fight for Till. People felt like it was a lot closer. I personally watched that fight and thought that Whittaker won without any issue, but that was back at UFC on ESPN 14. That was July 2020. And 10 media members scored the fight for Whittaker. 10 media members scored the fight for Till. So again, that could have been, if he gets that win there, that would be 2 in a row. I mean, are we talking about him fighting Izzy? Possibly. I mean, that could have happened back then, but instead he loses, and then he has to fight a dangerous guy in Derek Brunson. So there we go. So that's pretty much it for Darren Till throughout his career. Again, a lot of promise, one of the most entertaining personalities in the sport, but you kind of wonder, this is a really big fight for him here, because this is probably the first, and I did a video on this right when this fight was announced, but this to me is the one fight that Till's had where he's fighting a dangerous opponent and someone that is not that notable. Nothing against Dricus. He's only had a couple fights in the UFC, but this is a very risky fight for Darren Till. If you look at who he's fought, these are all notable names in the weight class. You have to go all the way back to his fight with Bojan Velikovic, the last time he didn't fight someone that was notable. Look at this: Thompson, Woodley, Masvidal, Gastelum, Whittaker, Brunson. These are all notable ranked guys that he's had to fight. And Dricus is ranked as well, but you kind of get what I'm saying here in that Dricus, dangerous opponent with not the name value that comes with it. So I kind of have a feeling, this is kind of the UFC's way of saying, look, Darren, you got to fight. You actually have to show up to this fight, and 2, you got to win, because if you don't, it'll be 3 in a row. I don't think they cut him after this, but optically it would be 1 win if he loses this in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights. So there's a lot at stake here for Darren Till. But let's get to Dricus Du Plessis. Did have a chance to speak to Dricus before this fight. You can find the interview on my UFC interviews playlist. Really interesting guy. Told the story about how we had to reschedule the interview a few times because his power kept going out in South Africa. Apparently that's a thing where the government will actually turn off the power to kind of, I guess, space things out. He lives in South Africa, of course. So just a little interesting tidbit there. Dricus, you can see their 17-2 record. He's got 4 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 1 decision. He's the number 13 ranked middleweight. I mentioned it there. Darren Till ranked number 9, and he's ranked number 13. So Dricus is the one who has all the upside here in this fight. In terms of if he wins, it's going to mean big things for his career. He's 28 years old, like I mentioned. He'll be turning 29 in January, on January 14th. He's got a 76-inch reach, and he's 6'1". So he's 1 year younger, has a 1-inch height and 1-inch reach advantage in this fight. Looked on his page there. He's got a 2nd-degree black belt in kickboxing. Take that for what it's worth. He's also the former EFC middleweight and welterweight champion. EFC is a pretty notable promotion in South Africa. Produced a lot of fighters that have ended up in the UFC or bigger promotions. So got to mention that too. And despite only having 3 UFC fights, Dricus has a performance of the night against Trevin Giles. Remember that really crazy right cross, ground and pound finish in that one. Okay, looking back at his career, Dricus did not have any amateur fights. He actually made his MMA debut in July of 2013. So 5 months after Darren Till made his professional MMA debut, Dricus had his MMA debut. Just a little tidbit there. Did not make his UFC debut until October of 2020. However, you see he fought in EFC, fought in KSW as well. We can't look past that. He actually has a win over Roberto Sodiq, who at the time was 13-2. That is a very good win on the resume. I know he ended up losing in the rematch, but still very impressive. Roberto, one of the best fighters outside of the UFC. So I mentioned it there. He's got a 3-0 UFC record. He's got 2 stoppage wins over Marcus Perez and Trevin Giles. He only has 1 notable win so far, and that's Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares ranked. Brad Tavares has fought a lot of notable fighters in his career as well. So kind of interesting there. And no notable losses because obviously he has not lost. He's had a couple layoffs as well. Talking about Darren Till's layoffs. If you look at the fight going from Marcus Perez to Trevin Giles, there's a 273-day layoff. Going from Giles to Tavares, there's a 357-day layoff. And this is actually the first time in his UFC career he's fought back-to-back in the same calendar year. So, and we'll explain why that is in a second. It's not injury related, but I'm sure Dricus wanting to be a little bit more active here. I'll tell you now what's happened. So in a couple cases, with the Gastelum fight, for example, Gastelum had an injury. He was rebooked after this fight. Chris Curtis had an injury, had to withdraw from his fight. Andre Muniz, he had to withdraw to that fight because imagine if that would have happened, by the way, what a great fight that would have been. He had visa issues, right? Coming over from South Africa. There's been some visa stuff that's happened to him as to why we have not seen him take a few fights. So that's sort of what's been slowing him down just a little bit. I did mention it there that Dricus is the former KSW welterweight champion. So he's actually fought at welterweight 4 times in his career. He's fought at middleweight 14 times, and he's had 1 catchweight middleweight fight of 176. It wasn't a weight miss. It was just an agreed weight in that fight. And you'll see here, Dricus has not had any close fights. He's usually finishing his opponents. The Tavares fight clearly won that fight. He actually almost finished Tavares in that one, looking really good. But yeah, no controversial decisions for Dricus. Let's go have a quick look at the odds right now. And you'll see that on most books, Dricus about a, not a 2-1 favorite, about -140, -150 around there. Darren Till, the underdog in this fight. Which is a little bit interesting considering the the amount of UFC experience that Darren Till has. He obviously, and you look at Till's resume of who he's fought. I just mentioned the names there, all notable guys that he's fought, and some of them he's lost to, and some of them he's beat, like the Kelvin Gastelum. That was a very good win. You remember that whole circumstance where he had to fly in late to the fight, and there's worries if he's going to make weight. He makes weight and he beats Kelvin Gastelum, quite well. So that was after, I believe that was after Gastelum's like absolute war against Israel Adesanya. So that was a really good win for Darren Till back then. Anyways. You can see the favorite does have Dricus here, Darren Till, the underdog. There's a lot of questions here. There's and this is a very interesting fight, and I love fights like this because it's really gonna tell us a lot about both guys. On the one hand, you have Dricus, who has looked sensational since coming over to the UFC. He's all the wins have been dominant. They've been great. He looks like the real deal, and this sort of new wave of middleweights coming through the division, and sort of a passing of the guard of some of the older names that you've seen in there before. So Dricus, definitely the real deal. But Darren Till's his first sort of really big opponent. I mean, Tavares, again, notable opponent, but right now Darren Till, one of the most popular middleweights in the weight class, and obviously a very exciting personality as well too. For Darren Till, like I mentioned, this is his first fight since probably the Boyan fight, where he's fighting someone that is very dangerous and does not have the sort of the name value that some of the other names he's had has fought. Till's been injured a lot. He's had a lot of layoffs. When Till is healthy and good, he's a very good fighter. We've seen him pick up some very impressive wins. Like I said, the Gastelum one was very good. Even against Robert Whittaker. Again, I thought Whittaker won that fight, but the fact that it even went that long, and the fact that Till, cracked Whittaker pretty good in that first round, and Whittaker was able to survive, I think shows just how good Darren Till is. They both have great stand-ups. This is definitely going to be like a fight of the night type performance from both guys. I could absolutely see that happening. I don't think this goes to the ground. I think it stays standing, and I think it's just shot for shot who's the better fighter here. And honestly, if we're looking at it that way, I think you have to look at Dricus taking this fight here. Now, it's only 3 rounds, so this is a 5-round fight. Maybe it's more likely to see a finish, but I'm looking here at Darren Till's resume. You look at some of the guys he's losing to, Derek Brunson was a 3rd-round finish. It was a submission win, but Brunson, was really using his wrestling and all that. And I don't think we'll see that type of fight here from Dricus. Whittaker, like I mentioned, went the distance. Was knocked out by Masvidal. Now listen, Masvidal, again, has some serious power. And now I think the weight cut had a lot to do with Darren Till getting knocked out in that particular fight as well. Got submitted by Woodley, but you look at sort of a theme here. Woodley and Brunson both wrestled him and was able to choke him out. That's not really going to happen here. Masvidal has knockout power, but again, I think Till was more susceptible to the knockout after cutting so much weight to get to 170. We talked about the weight cut misses. He is cutting a lot of weight to get to 170. Middleweight is a much better weight class for him as well. And like I said, the one thing we can really take from Darren Till, because a lot of people say, oh, Till's overrated, all these different things. He went the distance with Whittaker. That means something. Whittaker is very, very, very good. In fact, I think Whittaker, if you look at the tier of middleweight right now, it's Pereira, Adesanya, Whittaker. And I think after that, there's a big drop off. So the fact that, he had that, looked like he was healthy in that fight, went in there and went the distance with Whittaker. I think that definitely was, a very, very impressive, what he was able to do in that fight. But with all that said, I'm going to go Dricus by decision. I think that's the play here. I don't think he'll be able to finish. He could finish Till. It's possible. But again, I look at like a Robert Whittaker and some of the other guys that he's fought who have knockout power. Those are, like I said, like Whittaker couldn't finish him in that fight. So I'm kind of basing it off that a little bit. And I don't think the weight cut will be an issue for him to being more susceptible to the knockout. So yeah, I don't think he'll knock out Till. Till may be able to knock out Dricus. Dricus has lost before. But I should point out, he's only been knocked out 1 time in 18 fights. And that was the 3rd-round stoppage to Roberto Sodiq in their rematch. Darren Till's never been knocked out at 185. So that's another thing to consider. So that's where I think they'll go toe to toe, but I think Dricus is going to be going to look a little bit better. Again, Dricus has barely taken any damage in his career. If you look at like his overall scope, Till has a number of injuries. Till's been very inconsistent about fighting. That leads me to think that I think Dricus takes this. So I'm going to go Dricus by decision. I think even right now, getting him at the price you're getting him at less than 2-1 odds, I think there's some value there. I think with Till, unfortunately, I just think he's a guy that, we're going to be starting to talk about soon of being, one of those what ifs because of just the injuries and the way he trains and different things like that. I mean, you look at all the fights that were supposed to happen happen that have, not happened because of his injuries. That is a bit concerning for a guy who's not even 30 yet, right? Darren Till is 29 right now. So it's a little bit concerning there. So maybe we see Till turn back the clock in this fight. Maybe he looks like his old self. Maybe he goes out there and knocks out Dricus. I'm not looking past that possibility, but if everything we have presented here right now, I think Dricus by decision is likely what's going to happen. So my official pick is going to be Dricus Du Plessis by decision over Darren Till to get it done. And then we're going to start talking about Darren Till. Is he going to be able to keep his UFC job? We'll have to see. It's also going to depend how he looks in this fight. So I don't know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking? How do you think they win? Again, more than happy to discuss these fights with you guys as long as there's no insults and all that stuff. I'm always willing to listen to other points of view, and there's the odd time maybe I missed something in these breakdowns. So more than happy to talk to you guys about that. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if there are any other fights you guys want me to preview that are coming up, again, this was one that I felt needed to be talked about. So wanted to get this one in before the big card next Saturday. So definitely wanted to do that. But let me know if there's any other fights you want me to preview, and just know that I do preview all the main events for the most part and the title fights as well. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.